We're here at the New York International Auto Show to talk about what vehicles moved us and what the new technology is. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Talking Cars. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Mike Quincy.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
And this is a really special episode for us. We've been able to get out of the state. You know, we escaped Connecticut. We're here at the New York International Auto Show. They let us out, and we have a live studio audience in front of us. And it's great because we're going to talk about the auto show, tell you guys what we saw, and then take some questions. And it's a big show this year. We're pretty impressed with it, right, Jake? I mean, it's almost like the People's Auto Show.
I've been coming to the New York Auto Show ever since I was a kid. You know, I grew up in Jersey, and ever since I was like 5 coming here. This is actually probably the biggest New York show I have ever experienced. I mean, there's so many like serious introductions, like big cars. I mean, this is amazing.
Well, definitely. I mean, it's stuff that instead of being concept-y, you know, and all kinds of stuff that you're just never going to see. It's a styling, you know, exercise. There's real cars that everyone in this audience, people who are going to be coming to the show over the next couple of weeks, can just go out and buy because they're practical, useful cars.
Right. I mean, the New York show used to be kind of like the unwanted stepchild of the auto show circuit. And you've got companies like Toyota, Subaru, and Nissan introducing major, big selling models here in New York. So, let's hear it for the home team. Let's go New York.
It's true. I mean, Acura RDX, the Toyota Corolla hatch, the Toyota RAV4, Subaru Forester, Nissan Altima, the list goes on. We're going to talk about a bunch of those, and we're going to jump in right now to two cars that CR members really like. They're very popular sellers. First off, Jake, Toyota RAV4. I mean, big seller, big vehicle, very important vehicle.
Well, let's talk about how big of a seller that is. It was interesting. Cadillac was talking about, record year in terms of their volumes and how much they sold. They sold more Toyota RAV4s last year than all Cadillacs. So, I mean, this is actually, other than pickup trucks in the U.S. market, this is the #1 non-pickup truck, that biggest seller for Toyota. And, we talk about Toyota all the time. We talk about how conservative they are and their redesigns, and they kind of, take it easy, try to get reliability. This is not necessarily a conservative, at least the way that thing looks. It looks very different from the old RAV4.
It does, and without going to a huge weird grill or anything like that, it's a sharp-looking vehicle, and it's got some of the design elements. I mean, we can see it from where we're sitting, with the roofs almost floating, but they still kept it traditional in some ways. Powertrains, for example.
Sure, they're still doing a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, and I think for those of us out in the audience that really like fuel economy, they're still doing a hybrid model. Now, I don't think they sell in massive numbers, but the last hybrid that Consumer Reports tested, we got 31 miles per gallon overall, which is like the best we've ever seen in an SUV, a fuel economy test. So, I mean, I'm really glad that they're bringing that back, and they put. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I think it's kind of stylish. I think it's kind of cool looking.
Well, you touch on that with fuel economy, that there's two elements of the RAV4, and we're going to hit on those and move on, because it's also part of the Forester. People come in to buy for two reasons, really, that the dealer networks are telling us. One's fuel economy, and what's the other one?
The safety features, the new advanced safety features. It's getting people, and this is not just us saying, this is actually people, the dealerships. I mean, they're actually saying that this is what is bringing people in, and we're seeing more and more of this, not just optional, but standard across the board. I mean, Toyota is certainly, they've done a lot in terms of that. Subaru Forester standard eyesight system, which is a really.
Well, let's jump into that one. Let's jump into the Subaru Forester.
Subaru Forester, yes, that was here too.
Because one of the big things with Subaru is, they're a small company and they've seen some big sales. With the Forester, I think a lot of people traditional Forester customers were a bit worried when they heard it was going to be redesigned.
Sure. Yeah.
But what did they drop on us?
Well, they dropped a new redesigned model for 2019. Standard forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking, but what they didn't do is change radically the look of the Forester. It's still kind of boxy, but that actually hasn't hurt its evaluation with Consumer Reports. It has lots of glass area, still good visibility, really easy access, easy to get in and out of the front seats. So, they were smart enough to say, we better not mess this up.
Well, one of the cool things they have in their display is they had, at least at the introduction, maybe they took it away, but I think they're going to keep it for the show, is that they had all the generations of Forester sitting there.
And I think they're up to 5 now, 5 generations.
And you could see the familial relationship throughout. I mean, the first one is hilarious to look at. It's like a small rectangle with a giant box of glass on the top of it. You know, but you still see big windows, like you said, small roof pillars, but it still delivers the Subaru hallmarks, the standard all-wheel drive. But
I think they were a little too
eyesight.
conservative. I mean, the thing is that, I mean, I don't know, you guys take a look when you see it, but I mean, it's really hard to tell the difference between this redesign and the old one.
But when you think about automotive history, Ford had a great selling Ford Taurus. And they did that kind of Ovid redesign where everything got round and sales tanked. You know, it's kind of like maybe Subaru looked at that and said, well, we can't mess this up.
Well, you know, they've gone a little aggressive with some of their cars. You know, the Impreza has changed over the years.
Maybe it was the B9 Tribeca that they just went over the top and they're like, we'll never do that again, never.
True.
But I mean, I think the taillights have changed. But anyway,
it has a little uptick in the back window.
But they did make it better. And one interesting thing that they have done is, we talk about driver engagement monitoring and the Cadillac CT6, which has this. This is another car that has a camera that looks at the driver and it's there for safety, not to kind of help out with a level 2 autonomous drive thing but it's actually sitting there to look at the driver and let you know if you know you're falling asleep or you're distracted or whatnot. So that's very interesting.
I think we're going to touch on that a little bit later, so we're not going to. You already killed it. So we'll just cut Jake out. So we're going to move to some more SUVs, but two brands that desperately needed them. The first one, Cadillac, which you touched on with their sales numbers. The new XT4 came out. They finally have a luxury
small
compact SUV.
Yep.
What are you thinking about it?
They have to have it. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is the heart of the luxury market. You know, you could have all. I mean, look, Cadillac has some great cars, but when it comes to luxury cars,
they're great cars that no one's buying.
Right, because everyone is buying
no one's buying.
SUVs.
Yes.
So to go that long without that size SUV is a hole. So I mean, we'll see. We'll drive it. We'll as soon as we'll see how it drives. And yeah, obviously there's issues with Q, but
Q is
they gotta have that.
It's improved, but it still was a mess in some ways compared to a number of the other systems. Like you said, they desperately needed that one. Another brand that needed an SUV, but almost opposite end, Lincoln. The new Aviator, a name resurrected. Sure. Because they had the name, they were going to use the name, they got rid of the name.
MT, the M something, MOUSE, I don't know. I could never get the naming formulation right with Lincoln.
Right.
So with the Aviator is handsome. It's really good looking. To me, it looks like a classic Land Rover. It just has really nice lines to it.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of people, certainly in this segment where you're spending extra for luxury, I think looks are important.
It's got that really unique center console with almost a floating control panel that's kicked up. That's an interesting element because it's not just a giant swath of plastic and digital hardware. There's almost like a pass-through there.
But the other thing is, I mean, inside that car, it's gorgeous. I mean, take a look, get inside it. I mean, it's just like, oh my God, everything is soft touch and velvety and leathery.
They did a lot of nice things with the Ford Explorer that it's based on, you know.
Well, but I mean, it's you know, it's the level. I mean, obviously this is not production finalized, but I mean, holy moly inside. I mean, this is like Bentley inside.
I mean, it's obvious.
They know how to do it.
It's obvious that manufacturers can sell upmarket SUVs. I mean, Lexus has been doing it with the RX forever.
Right.
So
they introduced that.
Lincoln has to figure this out. They have to get on this bandwagon. They have to take in these high profit models and get people in and out of their
they're
dealer.
almost done with sedans.
Yeah,
I mean, it's almost as if they brought the Conti, but are we going to see another generation of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just luxury in general. People are almost done with sedans.
Well, some brands did bring out sedans, and some kind of important ones. So Toyota Corolla hatchback. Interesting to bring out a hatchback as the introduction vehicle. Usually it's a sedan, you know, so we're going to call it sedan, we'll call it a car instead. Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, the news is new Toyota Corolla, right? I mean, the fact that it's a hatchback or not. But I think what's kind of interesting is that they launching with, well, first of all, they had the Corolla IA, which was their hatch, and that was kind of getting old, and they needed to replace that.
And the Corolla IM as well.
And then Scion.
IA, right, so there was the IM, which was the wagony thing. But what's interesting about it is you look at the market, right? You look at what they're doing in terms of small cars. It's always the hatch. This is the sporty one. And Corolla, I mean, one thing that they do a lot of things well. The thing they don't do is kind of like, you know, excitement. You know, people don't really think excitement in Corolla. But
it's milquetoast. It's white
But
bread.
during
does
the
its
press
job well.
conference, they were touting the Corolla's history, and it's the #1 selling car in the history of the world.
Well, they also showed the
But
A86.
yes, they were showing all these rear-wheel drive Corollas.
Right.
You could almost hear the collective audience go,
They're showing them drifting around.
So they obviously want to recapture some of that magic.
But if you look at what's going on in the market, I mean, what are their hot hatches, right? I mean, people think of the GTI, they think of the Ford Focus RS, they think of
even the Hyundai Elantra GT is a
The
whole
Hyundai
different
Elantra,
car.
or-
It's not maybe a Ford Focus ST, or an RS, but that's the sporty one.
Honda Civic R, right? I mean, that's again hatch. So if they could kind of get that kind of sporty, and they talked about 6-speed manual, I mean, again. Probably not a Corollas with 6-speed manuals, but talk about that. Now bring out the sedan, and maybe that'll help them.
Yep. The other car that I was kind of taken with it. I think it's a good-looking car, Nissan Altima, and that was a long-in-the-tooth model.
Sure.
I mean, that at one point it was a car that we talked about, like, wow, great fuel economy, and then the whole segment passed it by. It had great fuel economy for a V6 and the 4-cylinder. So, Mike, tell us about that, because it's got one interesting feature in the segment, but a bunch of new things.
I mean, when you think about the segment leaders in sedans, you usually think Accord and Camry, and you think, why is only Subaru offering all-wheel drive? Well, lo and behold, the smart people at Nissan said, why don't we put all-wheel drive in it? Which I think is pretty smart, because I think some people don't buy the Accord and the Camry because it's missing all-wheel drive.
Right.
Another reason to give Nissan some props here, this also is going to have standard forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking. We sound like a broken record, but we love this equipment. We think every car should have it. So
it's proven safety technology.
Sure.
I mean, right there. It's almost the new electronic stability control.
Sure.
But this car can't come soon enough for Nissan. The Altima in Consumer Reports testing has really just kept sinking.
I was actually just talking to some of the Nissan people about the all-wheel drive, and look, I mean, all-wheel drive isn't really brand new to the segment, because I mean, some of the domestics kind of played with that.
Ford
but
has
what
the
they
Fusion.
did was they often made it kind of the high-level one. And what Nissan's going to try to do is kind of bring that down. So even the base models are going to be available with all-wheel drive.
And not the performance turbo version.
Right, it's not available with the turbo 2-liter. So that'll be really interesting, and that may mean that if you're in the Northeast, or you're in the North, or you're in Canada, it may be the majority of Altimas are going to be all-wheel drive.
Yeah, you may actually hunt if you're living up here to go find a front-wheel drive one. Right, so they're going to have a new 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, which has the all-wheel drive or front drive, and then the big turbo is only going to be front-wheel drive.
But I kind of agree. I like the way it looks. I like the styling. I think it's not just a boring, boxy sedan. It's really nice looking.
It's edgy without being out there.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to a couple trends that we've seen at the show, and we've touched on a little bit of it. But the first big one has really been the integration of safety features as standard features on a lot of cars. And we still here at Consumer Reports want a standardization of the nomenclature throughout the industry. We don't want it to be, advanced safety track view, whatever. I mean, it was the same thing with electronic stability control, StabileTrack or this track or whatever. But still, a lot of companies are coming out with standard AEB and FCW, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cars that we're mentioning, and yeah, I mean, you have to at this point to be competitive, and it's the right thing to do.
And they're paying attention to Consumer Reports ratings, because we say, we're going to give you extra points for this. So, you might as well put it in.
Well, it's a key differentiator. I mean, first we buy all the cars, we test, et cetera. But in our ratings, if a manufacturer has it standard across the model, not just on a couple trims, they do get an extra point in our ratings. So that is moving the market a bit. Another thing that Jake was talking about, Hyundai has this interesting thing, and our biker friends, our triathlete friends, and our roadie friends will really like this, because it has to do with the doors, because getting doored, particularly in something like Manhattan or whatever, is an almost everyday occurrence.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what they're doing is they got all these sensors on the cars, right? And they're figuring out new ways of dealing with those sensors. So you think about like cars that have like blind spot warning, they can see something going on. So in the new Hyundai Santa Fe, they're showing this system where if there is like something coming up, and there's a kid in the back seat, and they go to open the door, they'll actually lock the door and prevent them from opening that. So, I mean, we'll have to see how that works.
Sure.
We could actually simulate that on our track, not with real kids or real cars. I don't know.
Plenty
We'll
of
work it out.
Plenty of bikers. So
We hire a lot
They're
of these stunt
expendable.
kids
We
all
have
the time.
we
I
have
don't
so
know.
many bikes. Actually. But it's really cool that they could think about all these sensors and figure out new ways of using them. And we saw the same stuff with the same idea with kind of like that tracker of trying to figure out when there's a kid in the back seat and reminding you
Exactly.
to do that. Hyundai's done stuff like that, and other manufacturers too.
Right, a minder for children.
Right,
GMC
right.
has that. There's other, certainly. The other trend that we kind of picked up on, I mean, others have seen it too. You'll all see it out there. The design of infotainment systems has really changed. It's almost kind of converging into a standard way, right?
Right. I think when you think about the evolution even of basic radios in cars, they were kind of a standard chassis, and on one side was the volume, and on the other side was the tuning, and there was presets in the middle. And really,
and then it would get stolen.
Just about all the automakers kind of did that, and I think we're kind of seeing in some ways the same thing with these infotainment systems. They've got a great screen. And they've
like this,
and but they've heard enough criticism from Consumer Reports and probably other folks
and the
that
users.
just say, you can't do anything. You have to swipe and you have to pinch and you have to do this. And more manufacturers are bringing back hard buttons and easy to use controls.
Well, what's funny is that, I mean, we've gone through this like weird learning, time where it's just like the controls were just, somebody said there's a touchpad here and there's a knob here and there's something on the ceiling. I mean, it's just like
Touchpad on the knob for a
touchpad
couple
on the
brands,
knob
yes.
that also moves around, and a mouse, and they couldn't really figure out, and a lot of them just really kind of fell in their face. But now there's this convergence, and honestly, if you look at a lot of these new cars, basically it looks like an Etch-a-Sketch that is right in the middle of the dashboard. You got basically a tablet with two knobs that go like this, and it's Nissan, it's Subaru, it's Toyota, it's Hyundai.
Yep.
I mean, they almost look like they have the same units. It's like Etch-a-Sketch that's like plopped right on your dashboard.
Yeah.
And it honestly works pretty well.
Well, it
So
does.
they
It's high
figured
enough.
out something that works.
It's high enough. It's not. It's accessible. It's not blocking anything. It's not taking your visibility down so low like some really big tablet type things. But it has the hard keys.
Yeah, to have the hard buttons available instead of you have a screen in front of you, you want to adjust the seat heaters. So you hit climate and you wait a second. Then you hit seat and wait a second. And then you decide you want level 1, level 2, level 3 heat. And you hit that. And the whole time you're not doing this, you're doing that.
And then when you're done, the sunroof closes.
Well, you remark on that because I had a 1996 Audi A4, and I loved that it had the roll for seat heaters. You just scrolled it.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden it became a touch and a turn a knob, and then all of a sudden it was just in another menu, and taking it and making it more cumbersome just for the sake of having a styling design.
This is a case where analog actually is better.
So speaking
than
of
digital.
analog, I was just in the new. Here's another car that's here. Is the Lexus UX, right? Which is kind of like think of it kind of like a Lexus Prius SUV, right?
Yeah.
But Lexus has really gotten weird with this mousy thing and the like touchpad
touch
thing.
sense,
But they actually have these little dials now for volume and tuning that's right here,
Yes.
and they're analog. And they kind of sneak them in, so they don't actually show them. But it's like, oh, that
But
works.
imagine,
It's almost off the dash. They took a
but
lot of that off the
imagine
dash.
running errands. It's a Saturday or Sunday, and you're running around. It's cold out, and you want the seat heat on, and so you're stopping and starting all the time. Every time you get back in the car, you have to redo the dance to turn the seat heaters on again. Instead of just keeping the knob kind of on medium, and it just stays there, and you start up the car, and well, look at that, the seat's heat works.
I did see that today. I took a look at it, particularly downstairs. They had the car up.
That was the one I looked at.
There's a secret. There's a lot of cars and stuff that they say up here. You can see in other parts of the room. I worry people are going to be driving like this. I'm not sure. It may encourage one-hand driving. So that we're gonna see that.
We'll see.
We're going to transition to the final little segment here about sometimes why people really come to see the metal. They want to see the metal that moves, and we each took time to walk the floor over the last 2 days. But the favorite vehicle of the show, or favorite technology of the show, something that really stood out. And I'm going to go to Mike first because there's a very interestingly named, interestingly positioned vehicle that's. Well, I'll let you go, and then we can.
Well,
we can go
I don't know
over
if you've looked at it on social media because it debuted yesterday. But and I'm going to try to work this out. It's the Volkswagen Atlas Tan Oak. Now we didn't know it was a Tanoke or we didn't know how to pronounce it. Now, listen, I'm a truck guy. I love trucks. We talked about the Honda Ridgeline, how much we love that. So I really this is a concept pickup truck from Volkswagen. Now Volkswagen teased us in the near past Remember the microbus concept?
Which version?
But we always like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever. You've got to build this.
Right.
So if they're doing it again, it's going to drive me nuts. So when you're done, go over to the VW area and check out this truck.
Tell them to build it.
It has just the right.
If you build it, they will
Yeah,
all come to see
It has just the right proportions. Listen, Ford got back in the small truck market. They're bringing back the Ranger. Honda's been pretty successful with the Ridge line. I think there's a market for small trucks. I don't think everyone needs F-150s and Rams and Silverados.
It's true. The Ridgeline sells 32,000 units a year. I don't know how many of those they're going to siphon away with another car-based truck.
But I mean, we talked about Nissan before and how sometimes their product line gets older. We know someone who works for Nissan, and they said the old Frontier pickup truck is still going. I mean, they've been producing this forever, and he says it's a cash cow. Because all the tooling and all the stuff they use to put it together, it's long been paid for. So VW has this platform with the Atlas. They've got good V6 engines. They have all-wheel drive technology. Build it, build it, build it, build it, build it.
And they may make it electric because they're going to be putting electric. They showed electric drivetrains in their two-row Atlas concept that they have as well.
So as much as I like cars and everything else, my favorite of the show is that VW pickup.
Jake, you talked about the Subaru technology, and I think that really hit home for you, right?
Well, the Subaru technology obviously is really important, but you know what? Forget this. I'm with Mike. You know what?
First time ever, I swear to God.
If they could call it something else, I think it's Tanoak, but it's spelled Tan-Oak. Forget it. It's a Volkswagen pickup truck.
Well, it's an evergreen tree in the beech family. It's native to the western United States.
No, you got to give props to John. He looked this up. He really did.
It's actually the Notholicocarpus densiflorus, but that wouldn't fit on the back. So.
You're breaking up. I think I'm going to the tunnel, John. But here's the thing, okay? You look at SUVs, right? And SUVs is the new family car. And for years, SUVs were truck-based, okay? And then suddenly, in the late 90s, they figured out how to make an SUV off of a car. And it took a while for that really to take hold. I think when it comes to small trucks, look, Ridgeline, Honda Ridgeline has always been a car-based truck, and it really was kind of a small player. Ahead of its time. I think eventually we'll talk about this in 10 years. We'll still be riding bikes, but in about 10 years, we'll see what happens.
Maybe a recumbent, unfortunately.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think eventually this is where the market's going to head. People are going to realize that you can make a truck that looks like a truck, that does the things that the truck
does 80 to 90% of what most people need.
Right.
But it drives great. It drives nice. Make it. So it's really kind of like a Ridgeline 2.
I shouldn't have to load the bed just to get a decent ride. Like the Tacoma. The Tacoma,
exactly.
It's a harsh riding truck around every day. But then I took it on vacation and filled it up and it drives okay.
I think it's going to be the next big shift in the auto industry. It has to be.
I went a whole different direction. The
Tanoak.
Right. Hyundai G70. It's similar to the Kia Stinger. Turbo engines, manual transmission. If it was a wagon that came in brown, every journalist would have voted it for car of the show. I like the interior of this better than the Stinger. I'm not enamored with the controls of the Stinger. I like it's a little more chisel looking, and has a little bit of luxury. Kia's not the luxury brand.
Right.
The Kia, I said in the last episode, I'll say it again, looks kind of like a J.C. Whitney catalog got dumped on it. There's vents, there's gills, there's tack-ons,
But I think that this new Genesis is
harsh.
handsome. It's really good looking. It's really nice.
I think it's a very.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
it's a
looking
good
forward
car.
to driving that.
Yeah,
and one of those brands that's always flying under the radar. People don't realize how good Genesis is.
Someone said it was the best automaker. Who was that? Some kind of leading consumer magazine, I think it was.
Yeah.
No, but when people talk about getting maybe a luxury car that they've done well in their life, they want to trade up something. I said, have you checked out the Genesis? And they said, well, what's that?
Right.
I said, well, it's kind of an offshoot. Oh, Hyundai. Well,
It gives you a lot for its money.
Right.
It gives you a lot. So now we're going to do some questions from our live audience here, and anything about the show, whether it's stuff you've seen on social media and seen online, stuff you've seen already, or questions about industry or anything you're considering buying. So I think we have the first question, the young man down here.
Okay, my name is Brandon Lee. Nice to meet you. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I'm here with the Truman Media Program. I was just wondering, as a young adult transitioning to college, what's an affordable, good quality car that I can still pick girls up in? Like,
You're asking the wrong guy.
that's
sorry.
I just want to know that.
We're the nerds, right?
Jake's got this one. That's the power of the host. So here's the practical advice. First of all, used car is what you want.
Yeah.
Because the new car depreciates, 20% the first 6 months it rolls off the lot. After 3 years, it's almost 40%. Let someone else take that hit. You're going to get the same the technology, whether it's infotainment or safety, that a lot of new cars have. After that, it's all personal choice, really. I mean, you want a reliable car. Look to our stuff online. Look to our stuff, that has the 30 best used cars under $30,000, because we look at cars that are safe for that. After that, whether it's a Subaru BRZ sports car that you're going to roll up in, or if it is something as practical as a Toyota Corolla, because someone's going to sit there and go, hey, he's a guy who makes good decisions. He doesn't he doesn't spend all his money on tires and stuff like that.
It's a great question.
So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave. I'm also from the Bronx, New York. And my question for you is, I'm in the market for a midsize SUV, and I've always been a Honda Acura fan, but they're killing me with the elimination of what has become my favorite feature in my 2013 Accord, which is the lane watch camera. And of course, they're replacing it with the blind spot monitoring. My question for you is, what do you think is a better way to go? Relying on sensors and a little yellow light in the mirror, or give the driver the information with a camera and let me decide whether I have time to move in or if they're approaching me too quickly? So I'm kind of at this place where I really like the 2019 RDX. It's kind of calling my name, but without that lane watch camera, I'm going to have a really hard time letting go of my Accord.
Well, you could buy the Insight, because they will have the lane watch camera in there, because it's a slightly older older tech. But it's a very good question, and it's one that we've talked about a lot, because we have a strong opinion on that.
Here's my advice. So if you set your mirrors, because I understand where you're coming from, because certainly blind spot monitoring is great, but again, it's not 100%, and that's what you're getting at. So if I can actually see what's going on there, I can make that decision. I would say if you set your mirrors right, and don't set them so you can see the size of your car, set them out so you can't see the side of your car, you could actually eliminate a lot of those blind spots yourself, and you could actually see some. There's also those, you put the mirrors on, the little convex mirrors, you could add onto them, and you'd actually eliminate those blind spots. So if you do want to make sure you have a visual, and that's what I would recommend.
And the tough thing about that system is that it does nothing for the left side. So it's great on the right, and it's great for bikers and stuff like that, but you still have a blind spot here. And so it's if it had.
But this is educational for all of us, because we test cars all the time, and we have features that we like and we don't like, and none of us really liked the lane watch. But here we have someone that's saying, no, I really like it.
In the right situation, it's good.
I mean,
you
that
get
helps us.
4 lanes or something like
Sure.
that. It's pretty amazing.
Robert from beautiful Staten Island, New York, over here. I just had a question about the new Corolla, and I guess by extension a lot of the new cars, but I know a couple of the trims come standard with the manual transmission. I was just wondering how that worked with Toyota's kind of standard suite of safety tech. How does that work?
Well, we were curious about this too, and we've actually tested it on some cars. So one kind of an enabler about it is the start-stop. Now, I don't know if that's with a Corolla, but so the whole situation of stalling a car kind of goes away with start-stop, because as soon as you get off the clutch, it'll restart. But the issue is if this car is actually stopping you from getting into an accident, if it slams on the brakes and stops you, and you don't go for the clutch, I've tried it on the track, and in this situation, it's almost like, without even thinking, you jump on the clutch and you wind up not stalling it. If you don't do that, it'll stall the car. Okay, you didn't crash, the car stalled, you restart it, and it's worth it. So we've seen that in some cars. It'll stall the car, you restart it, and you haven't, cracked up the front of the car.
If it's your first date, though, they're not going to be impressed. You just stalled. So I was thinking about your question.
Hi, gentlemen. My name is Wallace. I'm from New York. Now I live in Jersey. Nobody judge me. We had, in the beginning of the segment, you talked about the all-new RAV4. I didn't know anything about it until my friend ironically talked about it last night, and this is my first time seeing it. To me, when I first seen it, the back of it looked like a Jeep product. And then the wheel arches looked like a Jeep Compass or something like that.
Toyota would be real happy to hear that.
Yeah,
by the way.
I think they'd be happy.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And the second thing is Acura's big release for the RDX. I'm also an RDX Acura fan. I have a Type S, 10 years going, still running. The RDX this is a big release for them, and they have a lot riding on it. And you guys really didn't touch on that when you were talking about the SUVs.
I think what they have to be most concerned about is try to make, improve their controls. Some accurate controls are a little flaky in our tests, but I mean it's always been a solid performer. One of the few actually Acuras that we've recommended over time.
It's their most reliable vehicle
Right.
at this point, and they're replacing
and
it.
we were talking about this when we were putting our April issue together, and Jake said you know why the Acura is the RDX is the only one recommended? It's the oldest design.
So I like older Acuras too.
Yeah.
And they had some great cars, but to put a fine point on it, I mean, the current RDX is the only one that has decent reliability right now, and it's because it's the older one, and they've had issues with transmissions, and now they're throwing this 10-speed into it. I would just say hold off. If you're really interested in the
wait a
car,
year.
wait a year. Let's make sure they get the bugs out of that car first.
Yeah, and that's with anyone. I mean, whether it's the most reliable brand out there or vehicle that they're replacing, everything takes a drop.
But being a Honda Acura fan, you obviously remember the day when everything Honda made or Acura made was great reliability.
Right.
And they were a powertrain company. They were a
yeah,
solid
it's
powertrain
the
company
best
that also made
four-cylinder
cars.
engines for a while ever,
Yep.
and it's not like they lost their way, but they've kind of lost their way.
How are you, gentlemen? I'm Rob from Staten Island. I kind of have a question on the opposite end of all this technology. It's all the start-stop, the automatic collision braking, they're all great technologies, but how do you handle or how do you offset the fact that these safety systems are great, but the minimal accidents are going to destroy them?
Well, it's a great question. This is actually a question that I have talked with the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety about, because they represent the insurance companies. And if they're adding all this safety equipment that is winding up, damaging and costing more money to replace and all these things, is it a net benefit or a net? Certainly it's great in terms of safety, but in terms of cost. And actually, according to their data, it offsets it. Because what they're looking at is that because that safety equipment is there, even though, yes, it's expensive to replace when you get in those things, but it cuts out so many of those collisions, you wind up actually better than you would be. So.
And we also recently published a story on what happens when you're driving a car with all of these front sensors, and during the snow and ice, and it all gums up the works, and how
issue.
they can't always work through the front when the front of your car is full of ice.
Right, ice, or it's sometimes in rain and such, they get dirty. So that is an issue, and that'll be an issue going forward as autonomy starts rolling forward. They're going to have to deal with that type of thing as well, because that's certainly going to have an impact on those cars. So not easy when someone taps you when you're parked on the side of the street, but it probably will offset, like Jake said.
Hey gentlemen, my name is Francisco from Queens, New York. Now that Nissan is introducing all-wheel drive to the Altima, what do you guys think? You guys think Toyota and Honda will follow suit?
We talked about it for years.
Well, I have a theory.
No, Jake has a theory, everyone.
In my estimation, it's more profitable to sell a RAV4 and a CR-V than it is to sell an all-wheel drive sedan. So I think there is a certain, and we've seen it before. I mean, look, there used to be a Camry wagon, there used to be an Accord wagon. I think they'd much prefer to sell you a Honda Pilot or a Toyota Highlander. So I think that's what's holding them back. What's really interesting in some other markets, I mean, in Japan, they have an all-wheel drive Prius. I wish there was more cars like that available.
I think it's also that they've developed the QX50 platform that they introduced in LA, and that's very similar. And they were talking about it's a couple little tweaks here and there,
right?
For the big engine to have it. So you already have something that's based on. Camry's not. They're not doing an all-wheel drive Camry anywhere.
And then they get the Nissan Kicks that's front-wheel drive.
Only.
So I mean, the whole world's upside down, right? You got the SUV that's
right. They said
drive.
that's for the person who drives a Sentra and wants something to sit up higher. So we're only gonna make it front-wheel drive and keep the cost down. This is for someone who wants an SUV but doesn't want it, so they're gonna go with a sedan that has all-wheel drive.
My name is Maximo from Long Island, New York. Now with electric vehicles, Volkswagen's coming with a bunch of them. They're already here. Do you see that probably Consumer Reports a couple of years from now is just going to have a section for electric vehicles, since they promise that there's no transmission, they're going to be more reliable, and blah, 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 and all this. So is that an option that Consumer Reports is going to consider in the future when all these manufacturers have electric vehicles? Thank you.
I was just having this conversation with Gabe. I think he was here. We were just talking about that. I mean, we're talking about putting more electric charging stations at the track. We're looking at our budget going forward. We're going to be a lot of long-range electrics. I mean, that's really, I think, the game changer. A lot more cars that are going 200, 300 miles, they're electric. They're real cars. And yeah, reliability, they should be better.
Go walk over to the
Kona.
Hyundai booth, the brand,
Yes.
the Kona. 250-mile range is the promise. And the Kona is a small vehicle, but no compromises as far as cargo capacity or rear seat room. Now, it doesn't have a lot of rear seat room to begin with, but it's not as if you're sitting with your knees up, or they made it as a jump seat. So yeah, it's an SUV-looking vehicle, not like the Bolt, which to some people the styling is a drawback.
In the next 2 years, we may see a dozen vehicles with over 200-mile range, and they're real cars, and we're absolutely going to have to commit to test these cars.
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and we definitely will have something like that in the future. That's all we've got for this really special episode of Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. For Mike, for Jake, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to thank our podcast viewers and listeners for their week-over-week attention and our thumbs up. Remember, you can always find out what we talked about in the show notes below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.